Roads? It's the Ernest Hancock Show. Where we're going, there aren't any roads.
Yeah, what's that mission? I just want to know the truth, man. Just tell me the truth, tell me the truth, tell me the truth. Because if you're not telling me the truth, do I want to listen to you? Well, sometimes I do, just so we can make fun of you. Well, we do that a lot. But here we're trying to get the truth behind this foreclosure thing. A little bit of understanding where we are now, because we had an opportunity. We had Martin Andelman had an article up that we put up, and he was willing to come on and discuss this, because my thing is I haven't been keeping track over probably the last month. We knew this was coming even over a year ago. You go into Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com, and you go into the housing category. Just do a Google search. freedomsphoenix.com housing, and here it comes. Now, the thing is, under housing, we tracked this from the beginning, from the time that they were starting to make court decisions saying, I don't know, man, this thing's not playing out the way it's supposed to. Since when do they care? They, them, those that won't leave us alone, want to steal our money and use a shiny badge to do it. Well, Martin, I'm going to give you an opportunity. Give us your bio. How do you have an interest in this? Where did you come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been a writer for 20 years, writer and a strategist I've worked for J.P. Morgan, Merrill Lynch. I'm not bragging. I'm actually ashamed of that. I wrote for companies like that for 20 years. My specialty was making complex subjects easy for people to understand, and then people said I was funny. So in 2007, when the banks broke the bond market, things started to get really bad. I looked at my wife and said, I better start to write about this. No one's ever going to understand it, and the banks are going to blame it on the borrowers, and people are going to start blaming their neighbors for this, and then they're never going to be able to fix the problem, because, no one's ever going to want to help irresponsible subprime borrowers, so we're never going to be able to fix the problem. It's not really the problem is not the borrowers, the problem is the banks. So I started writing a blog that's called Mandelman Matters, and now I've had over 5 million readers, and I write every day, and I don't accept advertising. I don't have a commercial interest, so I can say what's really going on and not have a boss who tells me not to say that.
All right, tell me what's really going on. How did this start? We started, it's 9/11, the dot-com bubble went. We got to reinflate the economy. We're putting interest rates down to nothing. How are we going to, pump money into the market? And not on my watch. We're going to have us a robust economy so my banking buddies make all kinds of cash. So what'd they do?
Well, everything's fine up until, you get to 2007. An event happened on July 10th, 2007 that's never happened before. And no one ever talks about it. It never comes up. But it's an event that never, ever, ever happened before in the history of the country. On July 10th, 2007, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, who are the rating agencies, they provide credit ratings for bonds, they came out and said, we're going to downgrade the ratings on 1,032 bond issues. So we thought they were AAA, but really this one's A, or really this one's BBB. We were wrong on these. Now, 1,032 bond issues is less than 1% of the mortgage-backed security bonds. It's not a big percentage. But investors all over the world saw this and heard this and went, wait a minute, if you're wrong about those, what about these? Are you going to come out next week and you're going to change these? And they panicked. They dumped all their bonds. People dumped bonds overnight for anything they could get them out of here, because they couldn't trust the ratings. As I'm sure you know, and I'm sure most of your listeners know, bonds are bought based on their rating. If it's a AAA-rated bond, it's supposed to be super safe, but you get a low interest rate. And if it's a junk bond, it's not safe, but you get a high interest rate. But if you buy a AAA-rated bond and then find out, it's not really AAA, well then, wait a minute. What is it then? You can't assume it's AA. You got to assume it's really bad, right? It could be terrible. Well, a lot of the places that they sold these bonds to were pension plans. And pension plans have bylaws, and they're not allowed to hold anything but AAA-rated bonds. So, as soon as that happened, the pension plans dumped all these bonds, and at that moment in time, the bond market froze. The credit markets froze. And within 2 weeks, banks wouldn't loan to each other. The Fed had to come in, reverse its position, start pumping money into banks, and we've been in a free fall ever since. I mean, that's the day it happened. Now, I just want to say something for all your listeners know this. The housing bubble actually popped a year earlier in the 2006. By the summer of 2006, Greenspan had raised interest rates 17 times in a row. So he wanted to cool this down, and it was cooling down. And so that started in 2006. But the worst of the loans, the riskiest of the loans, started foreclosing in 2006 and in 2007. But on July 10th, 2007, when the rating agencies came out and changed the ratings and the bond market froze, that was it.
Now let's go ahead and go back there a little bit. The bond market, when they reduced their ratings on these, why? What bonds were they? They're
mortgage-backed securities.
Okay.
They are mortgage-backed securities, and the reality was that the banks had been packaging bonds with mortgage-backed securities in them, and we all know toward the end there they were making loans to anybody. And not just, I'm not saying this in a bad way, I'm saying they were intentionally going out and getting, a gardener and putting down that he makes $80,000 a year.
Oh, no, I know.
Okay, on purpose. They wanted these bonds to fail because they were going to be able to bet against them, right? We've all heard about credit default swaps. I mean, they were going to be able to bet against them. So they had packaged bonds that they knew would fail, and the rating agencies started to catch it and see what was going on, and they downgraded the ratings on these bonds.
Okay, now this is when you say they downgraded the ratings on the bonds in, when was it, 07?
Mm-hmm.
See, my thing was that, for full disclosure here, my brother-in-law is one of the raters at Moody's.
Okay.
Now, he does other bonds and, media, something, whatever, but you can imagine the conversations we have.
Yeah, he remembers the day, July 10th.
Oh, no. I got all kinds of stories, but this is the point. In the discussions that I would have, even before this happened, my thing is I'm going, how did they get a AAA to begin with?
Okay.
Right. This is your just, because I know how this works. This is my rhetoric. This is how it goes. You have this enormous buckets of money that are sitting out there. And I'm Goldman Sachs, and I go, you know what? How do I make that money my money? I want that money my money. That money needs to be my money. I'll make that money my money. So how do I do that? Well, you got to go to these pension fund managers. You got to there's always somebody. There's an individual or a small group of individuals that's going to, there's somebody's signature. There's some little board vote. There's something that's going to be buying these things. So to get them to do that, they go, hey, the law is I cannot unless you get a AAA rating. Not a problem. I'll be right back. And that's it. So they create some financial instrument that they can get them to give a AAA rating. Based on what? There was no, they weren't looking at the, they didn't know what MERS was. They didn't understand who was filing the paperwork. They didn't even get as deep into thinking that to have some kind of claim on somebody's collateral, their home, that you had to have some kind of ownership. Didn't even go that far. Didn't care. It was just, give me a rating. Okay, here's your rating. That's when it started. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when we come back. We'll be right back here on Declare Your Independence with me in just a little bit. Ernest Hancock here in Phoenix, Arizona. Be right back.